So I don't want to lose any moments whatsoever. So my name is Timaree Hagenburger, and I am a nutrition professor. You may have seen my table out across from the garbage cans. My son is helping me out today. I have my book. It's called The Foodie Bar Way, and this is how I feed my family. It is all whole food, plant-based, and there's not a drop of oil in it. And it sets up meals like taco bars. So it's one meal, lots of options, everyone's happy. And it's a lot of fun, and the food is great. And as a dietitian, I'll eat just about anything that's healthful, but my family, unless it tastes good, it's not going to get eaten. So, and the research actually shows us that when you eat food that you enjoy, you absorb more nutrients. So it is actually important to enjoy the food you do eat. But I'm all about loving the food that loves you back. When I grew up Italian, and I love cooking always. But I didn't realize we showed food love with food, but we did not love the food that loved us back. Because my family had high cholesterol and high blood pressure and some cancer, and we kind of all thought it was spotty. You know, we're relatively healthy. No one was significantly overweight. But then we realized that when we changed the food, all the genetic issues were gone, right? So then it's like, well, maybe it's not genetics, maybe it's the pork. So that's when I transitioned my family, which was about between 6 and 7 years ago. And we haven't ever looked back. We have not gone back at all. And part of it is because the food just tastes so good. And so when the food tastes fantastic and you feel good afterwards, then you're in good shape. And that's how it's easy to sustain it. And the other piece is knowing your why. And you don't have to have lots of whys. Actually, the research shows the more whys, the more reasons you have, the least motivated you are, because it dilutes your motivation, which is kind of weird, because when I started teaching this type of food, I would say, and not only does it taste good, but it's cheaper, and it's for the environment, and you do all this, and thinking you're selling it, and then people, they just think, well, if it's good for all those things, maybe it's not really that good for any one specific. And so they just need one why, just one. And then that's their why, and then they don't need to worry about it any more than that. So if I don't get a chance to talk about the book, that's what it is. 94 recipes, 32 bars, all these from breakfast all the way through dessert. All the pictures were taken by us, my husband, and a friend of ours. They're all in my garage, these books. There's no one, I have no publisher or anything like that. It's all me, because I wanted it to be exactly what I wanted. I'll tell you one. I want to show you one picture. This means the world to me. So my Nonna, Italian grandmother, so this picture is our Italian seasoning. And here's a little napkin that she stitched when she was like 7 years old. So I have this in the book, and I know she's having, looking down on me, knowing that the work I'm doing is making a difference in this world. So that's the kind of heart that I have in this book. This is not recipes from some random website. This is from my heart, and this is what my family eats, and this is what we thrive on. So I'm not here to cry, I'm not here to do that. I'm here to talk about the microbiome, which is amazing. Is there going to be a projector?
We are getting a projector.
Okay.
I want to determine if you're using a Mac.
Yes, I am.
Do you have your own connector?
No.
You need a Mac connector?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and Greg.
We also need to share it.
Okay, perfect. Absolutely. So I am going to just start the presentation. Okay, so. And if we get it on PowerPoint, then that would be great. So I may look down, okay, but I'm obviously focused on you. So something that I did not appreciate was the large intestine. So as a dietitian, I have always been fascinated with the GI tract. And it's funny because when I talk about this in class, I teach full-time, nutrition at Cosumnes River College in Sacramento. And actually, we started this semester a plant-based nutrition and sustainable ag certificate program. And this is not night school. This is not in some little corner. This is full on. You get credit for life skills for your AA or AS degree. And the classes have full wait lists. And they're full and it's fantastic. So I teach a plant-based nutrition and a plant-based cooking class. And then horticulture is teaching the sustainable ag in our gardens next semester. So it's fantastic. But when I teach this in nutrition class, I say, I have no problem talking about poop because dietitians, at least I don't, it's really important to talk about this. So I said, you may come home from school one day and think, I didn't learn anything but in class today. But this is important because your GI tract really determines your health, not only overall, but also your happiness. And people don't realize the connection with mental health. And now we're learning this microbiome. So when I talk about this in our class, I talk about the fact that you're made up of trillions of cells. And whether they be blood cells or muscle cells, most of us consider ourselves human, right? But we're only 10% human because our microbiome, for every one human cell, there's 10 bacterial cells. So you're really only 10%. And if you look at it genetics-wise, your genetic material, you're only 1%. 99% of the genetic material is actually from bacteria. And most people assume that that is a negative thing, but it is not. So this is a symbiotic relationship. And only when things get out of balance, then things kind of go awry. Okay, but when people say, I am what I eat, you are what you ate, and you digested and absorbed, and how you fed your bacteria. Because when they are happy, you are happy. Do you have a follow, or you're still waiting? Okay, all right. I just don't want to ignore. When you're ready, let me know. So one thing that I like to talk about with my students is retention time in the GI tract. So most people assume they eat food and it's in your body for, I don't know, like a day, right? I mean, most people think that. So I show them some videos how an omnivore who eats animal and plant products, on average, it can be 5 days from ingestion to excretion, okay? 5 days. And I also talk about the fact that our GI tract is actually where we have the most intimate contact with the world. Most people think it's your skin, but your GI tract has so much more surface area. So instead of, I say, okay, now pretend like we took your meal and we put it in a blender, and instead of eating it, we put it on you. And you had to just hang out, and I said, and then I'll tell you soon how long you get to hang out. And then I show them the videos about retention time. 5 days, room temperature. How's that In-N-Out meal feeling now, right? Nasty, okay? So this idea that that's really what you're doing, you're painting the inside of your GI tract with this food. And so we don't realize, but for plant-based eaters, we're talking 12, 24 hours really as the time that it takes. But for someone who's eating omnivore, it can take 4 or 5 days on average, which is a long time. And the problem with that is our body is meant to get rid of all of these toxins. And so some of those toxins are extra estrogen, cholesterol, all these carcinogens, the cancer-causing agents that our liver has detoxified. They're meant to be taken out of the body with the waste. But if it's sitting in there for a week, right, 4 or 5 days, it actually gets reabsorbed. And we see there's a very strong correlation with breast cancer diagnoses and constipation. And that's because these secondary bile acids are getting reabsorbed, and the extra estrogen that our body's trying to get rid of, and it concentrates in the breast tissue at a rate that's 100 times what we'd see in blood. So then we see these links, and so many people are constipated. That's the norm. That's one thing when my students change the way they eat, they're like, whoa, whoa. You know, sometimes they give me the details, and that's fine, and sometimes not. But they're like, my feet used to fall asleep. I used to be able to get through parts of a book. They're like, now, I mean, it's like peeing sometimes takes longer. And it's true. Our bodies are meant to move this stuff through. But that's something that's of interest because in the large intestine, we just really never paid attention to it being a place that was more than just a place to hold the waste. And now we know that this microbiome affects, it's a second gut, actually. Or, excuse me, a second brain. You've heard of this, the second brain. Okay, so let's talk about the microbiome. So one of the things that I hear a lot about is people taking probiotics. And the challenge with that is in your own gut, you should have about 1,000 different types of bacteria. So there's no way that taking a bottle of one type of strain is going to mimic what you have. And that the outside breathing in the ocean air, that is going to give you the diversity of microbes that you need. The key here is to feed them. You have to feed those microbes. And you do that, plants eat, or microbes eat one thing, fiber. They eat carbohydrate, they need fiber. And they do phenomenal with plant-based because animal products have zero fiber. Animals have bones to hold them up, plants have fiber. And so that fiber, we don't break it down, even though it's glucose. So fiber is nothing but a polysaccharide, which means one glucose hooked to another glucose hooked to another glucose, but we don't have the enzyme that breaks that bond. So we have to continue, it goes through our GI tract to our large intestine, and then the bacteria will break it down. So one thing that we like to talk about with this is when you have good digestion, you have the bacteria that can do this breakdown. And this works in symbiosis. It keeps the digestion where it should be and the absorption. We also talk about juicing versus smoothies, right? So you hear people talk about that all the time. And when I was in school, we learned that fiber was like a brush that cleaned out the colon. And now we know it's so much more. One of the issues is that the fiber is actually attached to the phytonutrients, as much as 70% of them. And the only thing that will cleave the phytonutrients from the fiber is our gut bacteria. So you have to ingest that fiber as it is, and then the bacteria will pull it apart, and then you can absorb the phytonutrients. So juicing, not only is it a hassle to clean the juicer, okay, juicer cleaning versus blender, no question, right? I mean, way easier. And that's the other piece of this, is that if it's not easy to do, it's not sustainable. So you're not going to take 45 minutes to clean out the juicer every morning. It doesn't happen. But how easy is it to put in water, a little bit of soap, and you're done with the blender. So, but then to realize that whole food also, because you have the fiber intact, you're able to get all of the phytonutrients that food has to offer. So that's one piece, okay, of this whole process. And then, this was so incredible. I spoke in Alaska, at the Veg Fest in Alaska, a couple of years in a row. And last year I spoke about the microbiome. And I was learning in preparation for all this about the short-chain fatty acids that are produced by these bacteria when they can ferment fiber. So butyrate is one of those. And I know all of you have heard people that have said, oh yeah, I changed my diet and my cholesterol dropped and my blood pressure dropped. And people who have had trouble with blood sugars, oh, my blood sugars are better. And you're thinking, how is it possible? And as a dietitian, I went to school, I did my master's program, dietetic internship, I worked in the hospital, and you think, there's no way that one diet does all this. How is it possible that you can help all these people with one way to eat? But then you start learning about the power of the plants fermenting the fiber. And these short-chain fatty acids, like butyrate, do amazing things in that they function like the meds that people are taking. So they have the power to work like the statins do, but from the natural perspective, right? They have the work. They can do the work that the blood pressure pills can do. So then it starts to make sense why this fiber is so powerful. So we see blood pressure drop, blood sugar drop, cholesterol levels drop. And it's because of the power of the fiber. So it's not, and it's this double whammy in a good way, because it's not only are you taking away the animal products, which we'll talk about if we can get this up, but you're also adding in these beneficial plants that provide these nutrients and these byproducts like these short-chain fatty acids that do amazing things on a cellular level. So let me see here. It also, oh yes, promotes satiety, butyrate does, and it also reduces fat storage. And this is incredible. We actually see, and certain foods that are high in fiber, especially those with the phytonutrients in soy, so you hear people say phytoestrogens and they're like, freaking out. You don't need to freak out, okay? Phytoestrogens actually bind to the receptors which help our body and prevent breast cancer and prevent breast cancer recurrence. So, but these also we can titrate in the amount of soy and show less and less and less fat going into the fat cells. And the more soy you have, when we look at this, the less fat goes into the fat cells. So it's not even promoting fat storage. It's just incredible. And it's a whole combination. And you don't do soy and everything. You don't do textured vegetable soy, and you don't do all that. You do, it's a legume, right? Edamame. And you do the fresh, you do the tofu, you do the tempeh, you do some of that, and you weave that into a variety of other foods. Okay.
Timaree, I'm sorry, the door was locked. No, you can have it.
Okay.
You want me to set it up?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great. I'm happy. I'm just going to keep going.
Okay.
And then,
Yep.
is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because I have lots to say, and I have people who are interested.
Got it.
All right. Yes.
So you touched on smoothies versus juices.
Versus juicing, yes.
Do you recommend smoothies?
Oh, yeah.
And not recommend juices?
Correct.
Okay.
Only because you're losing the fiber and it's the hassle.
Got it.
Yeah. No, and I don't buy juice. I eat fruit.
Right.
And I like to chew. I love fruit. So, yes.
You said something about probiotics and vegetables. So are you saying if you need a plant-based diet, you don't have to take extra probiotics?
Correct. Typically, yes, because they're in the food, and as long as you feed the bacteria the fiber, that's prebiotics. So I have slides about that too that I'll get to. But yeah, and what I typically hear is people saying that there may be indications if you've been on a long antibiotic regimen to do the probiotics, but as everybody needs it, it may actually, depending on how much you're taking, crowd out some of the other species because you're just taking a couple strains. So it's typically the long-term outcome doesn't necessarily seem to be great. But I'm also assuming too that you're eating well. I mean that you're eating whole food plant-based. You're not just eating crummy and hoping it'll get fixed. Okay.
How did you get those arms?
7-minute workout, which is just that you can look it up as an animal 7-minute workout, and eating plants. Yeah. No oil. Yeah. No. But yeah. I mean, I'm Italian. Little tree trunk legs. I mean, this is this is my little body, short girl. Yes.
Ask you about the soy products.
Yeah.
If you have cancer or breast cancer or whatever, eating soy, regular soy, not food,
So we
something that
We see the research shows with the inclusion of soy reduces recurrence, so increases chance of survival beyond.
any kind of soy then it doesn't
We
have to
do
be,
the ideal would be less processed. So like tempeh would be what like fermented, that would be rock star, fantastic. I would always go with organic just because it is sprayed, even though 90% of the soy that's not organic goes to animal feed. So most human consumption is not super sprayed, but it's so easy to find organic now.
The probiotics, it's in everything now. Can you overdo the probiotics amount so that if you do too much of it, you're out of balance?
Yeah, I don't think you need to take it. I think you just need to eat whole food. Yeah. go crazy. Yes,
I took got some prebiotics.
prebiotics.
Yeah. Before probiotics. You know, the fiber you're supposed to eat.
Okay.
And I took a little bit, made my stomach real
Yes.
upset.
Okay.
And I tried to get a week later to do the same thing.
Yeah. You need whole food.
Yeah.
You don't need like isolated fiber. I don't know if you've seen the Fiber One bars. My friends call them fart bars. Because that's what they do to a lot of people. You know, is they just bloat them, and so yeah. So, but whole food. And you know, transition slowly to up your fiber intake. And just go on lots of walks. Just chew the whole way. Yeah. The other thing that's really interesting is that a lot of people assume that neurotransmitters are made, you know, in different parts of our own body, but we actually see that serotonin, feel-good hormone, 90% is made by our gut bacteria. 90%. So when you have a microbiome that is fed with real prebiotics, the fiber, we actually see improved mood, and we can see that documented with psychiatric disorders. It impacts how we think, you know, and sometimes it's so hard to even contemplate that. But I was actually going to start my presentation with a quote from one of my students that she said, I don't know how to tell you, she said, and I don't think this is a good way to say it, she said, but I just feel better in my own skin. I said, you couldn't say it any better. Because that would be the best thing I could offer anybody, is that they would feel better being them, exactly who they are. And that's how they feel. When you're eating well, you actually just feel better being you from the inside out. And so this also includes brain, but we have the chemistry behind the scenes to know that this is actually working on a cellular level. This looks much better, thank you. Produces antioxidants, so those microbiome that also reduces inflammation. It detoxifies drugs and environmental toxins. It will modify phytoestrogens and lignans to reduce risk of breast cancer. We see that epigenetics, so people are trying to sell you online, send in your hair sample and we'll tell you what supplements to take. We don't have that technology yet. That right now is a sham. At some point maybe we will, but what we do have is, if you eat this way, it will impact your genetic expression. So we can turn some genes on and some genes off. And Dean Ornish did this back with prostate cancer. He took prostate cancer patients, he broke them up into 2 groups, he gave them an intensive lifestyle change, which was basically lots of fruits and vegetables, walking half an hour a day, and some meditation. He saw in 3 months changes in over 500 genes. These guys had cancer. They didn't just have the genetics, but they had the cancer. And I think there were 48 genes that were turned on that were cancer killing, and 453 genes that were turned off that are cancer promoting. So you can have the genes, you can have the cancer, but what you choose to do with your choices impact whether they turn on or off. And then boosting the immune system. So the next slide is, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it very well, but this idea that your immune system, your gut is a huge piece of that. So this is the little gut bacteria talking on the phone. Hey guys, we've got a situation here, incoming rotavirus. And then the little immune cell says, no problem, what troops do you need? So it's this idea that there's this talking back and forth with your gut and your immune system. And then there's also more, okay, next slide, okay, so good, there's a couple things. Promoting undesirable bacteria, what are you currently doing? So it's not very easy here because we don't have a way to write things down, but I would like you, as we're going through, to think about what things you're doing that may be promoting the undesirable bacteria in your gut. So let's keep going. So which foods promote undesirable gut bacteria? So animal protein, specifically animal protein, rich in sulfur-containing amino acids. What is fascinating is that protein does not ferment. Carbohydrates ferment, so fiber ferments, but protein putrefies. So in your gut, and I can say, have you ever smelled someone's fart that smelled like someone died? Right? Have you had like what crawled up there? You know, this is true. Actually, it putrefies, and not only does it do that, but you produce byproducts like putrescine and cadaverine. I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. That is toxic to DNA, okay? And increases cancer risk, increases anxiety and depression, interferes with myelin sheath production, which is how we insulate our nerves. Ammonia is another byproduct. It destroys cells, alters DNA, favors cancer growth. Eating meat doubles your ammonia levels. Okay, no question. This is scary. Retoxifying compounds that our liver already detoxified. So there is benzopyrene in meat, and liver detoxifies it. Even if you're a meat eater, liver will detoxify it. And the gut bacteria produces a toxifying enzyme to free the carcinogen. And then it can get you again. Right in the gut. Okay? And increase your chance of cancer. Heme iron. Everybody runs around and says, oh, vegetarians are going to have issues with iron and anemia. Research says no. The other thing the research says is the heme iron, which is the animal blood iron, is stimulator of bacterial growth, and it also can form these danger cancer-causing compounds in the gut. So we don't, and it's very inflammatory. Next. Animal fat. So we talked about the animal protein, right? And so animal fat, so this is all flesh, eggs and dairy. Dairy is huge. Dietary fat stimulates the release of bile, and we talked about this before. Those bile acids stimulate growth of the bad bacteria, and the secondary bile acids get absorbed into the bloodstream, and then that's where they go into the breast tissue. And that's what increases breast cancer risk significantly. The free radicals that are produced by the dietary fat last a billionth of a second, and they do horrendous damage. They damage DNA, they're mutagenic, they activate these carcinogens in the colon, antibiotic residues, because guess where the antibiotics concentrate? In those animal tissues. They're fat. So that's where we know all the toxins in our bodies will end up concentrating. So how does fish oil sound now? Because fish oil is going to take the worst of the worst and concentrate it into that fat. And I used to buy it because I didn't know, right? I thought that was how we're supposed to get omega-3s. But again, you do the best with the information you have at the time. And when you know better, you do better. And that's what we're all about. This is Advancedglycation End Products. So this is really interesting. I'm going to read these to you. But AGEs are produced when foods are heated, especially animals. So if you notice, what is everybody eating in the United States? What's the healthy meat? Chicken. So barbecue chicken thigh, fried bacon, broiled hot dog, roasted chicken leg, roasted chicken thigh, pan-fried steak, oven-fried chicken breast, deep-fried chicken breast steak, chicken selects McDonald's, pan-fried turkey burger, roasted barbecue chicken, fish, Big Mac, and chicken nuggets. These are the highest sources of AGEs. I just did a consultation with someone who has polycystic ovarian syndrome, struggling with that. AGEs, just turn that on. This increases inflammation hugely. And I was thrilled because she was starting to look at plant-based. And I said, how ready are you? One of the things I get frustrated with is I tell people, I said, I can't want it more than you. And that's a frustrating thing because I want them to change. And she looked at me and she said, it would be impossible. She said, I'm ready. I said, okay, I'm going to suggest some things that are going to be different. I said, how much meat do you eat? She said, with every meal. I said, what kind of meat do you usually like? Chicken. I said, perfect, because it's full of AGEs. So when we take that out, you're going to see a huge difference. You know, so it's so exciting. Okay, next. So, food additives, and I can blow through these. Erode mucosal barrier, alters microbes. They use a lot of these to pump up shakes and to make salad dressings, bottled salad dressings. You know, in my book, I teach you how do you make dressing without oil. how do you make a salad dressing that's so amazing, right? And it teaches you how to do it, not just a recipe, but how to do it, because you don't need to eat this junk. You know, you eat a bottled salad dressing, it tastes weird, right? It has a weird aftertaste, it's expensive, and it doesn't need to be that way. The emulsifiers also have shown in rats to cause inflammation and metabolic syndrome, and we know Roundup does very bad things to our GI tract. Artificial sweeteners. So NutraSweet and Splenda, those seem to be the ones. NutraSweet, we know, not a good idea whatsoever. It has had more negative reports for the FDA than any other product ever on the market. And Splenda, people are, Splenda, that's made from chlorine like you find in a swimming pool. And so what that does in the GI tract, what do you think it does to bacteria? Okay, so that doesn't make sense. So dates make sense, because guess what dates are full of? Fiber, right? And not only do they taste like a cold chew, right, but they are full of fiber. Low carb diets. For those dietitians, I mean, we know it's not a good idea. And guess what it does? It starves your bacteria, because what do they live on? Fiber, that's a carbohydrate, okay? So this thins the gut lining's protective layer. You only have one layer between the outside world and your bloodstream in your GI tract. We need to keep that integrity strong. And so we see leaky gut. I'll hold questions just if you could. Now, taking probiotics is not the answer, especially if the person is not consuming whole plant foods. Bacteria need fiber. They'll starve and die off. You can take probiotics all day long, but if you don't feed them, they're going to die. Okay? So how many varieties are there in your colon? Beneficial bacteria everywhere. We just need to feed them. So here is my blackberry pear pistachio kissed oatmeal. I've got, let's see what else comes up when you click. Kiwis. Amazing. Kiwis are excellent for irritable bowel syndrome and protect DNA from damage. So now I don't want you to see probiotics, I want you to see prebiotics, okay? So those include a variety of plant foods. So we have beans, we have, obviously farmer's market, and these will promote the growth and maintenance of these good bacteria. I don't know if you've seen the research, but you can give a vegan a steak, and they will not make TMAO, this very dangerous carcinogen, unless you keep giving them steak. Because the bacteria that would do that doesn't live there if there's no meat. But if you start feeding them meat, then they will start to colonize those negative bacteria, and then you'll start to make those cancer-producing enzymes. So they'll stick around if they eat it. So fiber supplements, no. They missed the boat. You're totally missing it, okay? Keep going. Let's see what else we got here. Promoting beneficial gut bacteria, so what to do. Strategies. Enjoy plant-based whole food meals, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. So I have 4 things for you to focus on. Focus on including resistant starch, okay? That is primarily in cooked and cooled potatoes. Try red potatoes. Try purple potatoes, purple sweet potatoes. Beans, peas, lentils, corn, barley, quinoa, purple, black, and red, and brown, and wild rice. Have you heard of the second meal effect? Second meal effect is amazing. You give someone lentils or beans. The next day, their blood sugars are lower with the same breakfast. You can give sugar water to people. And if they've had the beans the night before or the lentils, their response is blunted. Why? The beans and peas and lentils are in their gut at that time, and the bacteria is eating that burrito. And that impacts your blood sugar levels. Amazing. Okay? Put your liver in fat burning mode as well. Prebiotics, right? So we talked about this. What are the most concentrated source? Leafy greens, 2 cups. That's just a start. Okay? You want to put them in everything. Last year, I talked about transitioning the family, and we put greens in everything. Edamame is excellent. Then we have other ideas. Jerusalem artichokes, dandelion greens, raw leeks, onions, garlic, asparagus. All these are fantastic. This is a loaded southwestern sweet potato. So good. It's in the book. All right, next. 3, fermented foods. So this is probiotics as well, but in a natural form. So we have sauerkraut. Super easy. Have cabbage, have salt, have container, right? Okay? And then tempeh. I was in Maui this summer. I spoke for the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii. Huge honor. And Maui Tempeh Company makes tempeh from adzuki beans. So we have miso, we have water kefir, we have kombucha, we have kimchi, we have natto, which we have a foreign exchange student from Japan this year, and she's eating natto. Very interesting, yes. Number 4 is limit fat intake. So enjoy whole food plant-based sources, plus greens, adding an ounce of nuts a day, ideally on top of your salad. So you can't appreciate this picture, but in my book I talk about the salad, my crazy salad, and I teach 5 classes back to back, 80-minute lectures, and I am like the whole time. I'm not like let's highlight from the textbook, as you can imagine. So I'm running around, and I am powered by these crazy salads that have sweet potatoes and beans, and I have pepitas and all kinds of. I love food, so. But I always put the nuts and seeds on my salad because you actually absorb more of the phytonutrients with that fat, with the whole fat. Not olive oil. 44 olives to make a tablespoon of olive oil. Not a whole food. Okay? And it causes inflammation in the vessels, and so we don't want that. So that's good. Let's go to that. So now, other things besides food. Be very careful with antibiotics, as we know, right? That's a whole nother talk. Now, limit or eliminate alcohol, coffee, black tea, and soda. Again, this is for the microbiome. Okay, this is not herb tea and all kinds of things. Refined sugar. Now, grow your own produce, visit local farmers markets, less stress. Okay, we have a couple minutes. Let's do an oxytocin breath. So take a deep breath. This is I teach my students at school. So you take a deep breath in through your nose, and then when you breathe out, okay, 3 times. Let's do it again. Loud, scare the people, okay? You guys are amazing. Another one. Babies with breastfeeding, that's oxytocin hormone. And so I teach my students anytime either in the car. That's great because it changes the way that you think. And I tell them too, like when they're talking with their parents and they kind of get neat, and it sometimes freaks the parents out. They're like, "What are you doing?" New technique, and it works. So that's important. Well, getting out in nature. Smelling the untouched forest, the ocean. One more little click. One drop of ocean water has millions of microbes. So let this come in, okay? And then you feed it the good stuff. All right, let's go to the next. Now, this is super important. Creating an external community. We are designed to thrive with quality connections, right? This is why we are here. Develop and nurture your plant-based whole food community, whether that be with meetups, whether that be with your friends, whether you're doing a foodie bar. I'll talk to you about foodie bar, potlucks. Our collective power can create a new normal, right? That makes it easier for everyone to make whole food plant-based choices. Benefits to the environment, to the animals, to human health. Now, the science. The company you keep can impact the quality of life in more ways than you ever realized. Your gut bacteria will become similar to those in which you share your environment and meals. So, people say, like, you're the average of the 5 people around you. This actually, we see this on a gut level, that the microbes will become similar to the people who you are with. So, I think I have one little thing on that. Choose your friends, because you can't choose your family. And spend time together eating. So, I'm going to show you. Can this be fun? Yes. Okay? So, this is the little foodie bar way. So, 2 more clicks. And 1 more. Okay, so cook-togethers. This is my dream, that my students will be able, and I actually need my book that's underneath the thing,
Well,
because I gotta show.
yep, yep, you got it. Oh, I
okay.
have this book. This is a fabulous book.
All right.
It is.
So first, do you notice there's hearts, okay? Because I love the food that loves me back. Now, and I don't have a big V on it, okay? This is just because the food is just amazing. It just happens to be completely animal-free. Now, it's also oil-free. So what I do with this book is I have these bars. So each bar has a basic bar and a raising the bar. So the basic bar, like for my baked potato bar, so the basic bar is baked potato and then basic toppings that are super easy. And then upgrading would be like maybe a baked sweet potato from the farmer's market that's purple. And then instead of a can of chili beans, maybe my seasoned black beans or my garlic mushrooms or something like red cabbage. You think, red cabbage on a baked potato? Trust me. So then, since I'm a teacher and I need space to write, you write down what combinations worked really well, who really loved it. We set these up for potlucks. So I say foodie bar potlucks. So this one right here, this loaded potato bar, we did in Sacramento at an event. We had 65 people. Everybody contributed. We set this up, and we had this spread, and 65 people had the meal exactly the way they wanted. If they didn't like olives, they didn't put any olives on theirs. And it's just so fun to do it like this, because there's a lot of people who get intimidated about potlucks, especially if they're transitioning their diet, and they don't know what to bring. But if you tell them, well, would you be able to bring some scallions? And they go, green onions. Oh, yes, I can do that. And then someone else says, oh, no, let me make the sofritas. I love that. I will cook. Or let me make the seasoned black beans. And then everybody contributes, and then everybody gets exactly what they want. So that's what this is set up for, and that's what the space is set up for here. And then if you have other recipes, that would work really well. And then I give an example of how I do the bar at home. So here's my Southwestern loaded sweet potato. And then it goes to pasta bar, and there's nachos, and there's not one drop of oil in the whole book. There's 94 recipes and 32 bars. And my dream is to have people do cook-togethers. For my students, instead of, hey, let's go to In-N-Out or whatever at night, let's have a hummus showdown. So everybody gets their little food processors, and then we do a roasted red pepper, and we do a sun-dried tomato, we do an olive, and then everybody does taste tests. So it's so fun. And people, it really, whenever you're at a party that's in a house, everybody ends up in the kitchen. Because that's really where the heart can be, and that's how we can show love, but with food that loves us. So what questions do you have? I think it's 4:44. I cannot believe it. I didn't think that I could.
How can we get the book?
Okay.
Why don't we do 5 minutes of questions,
Oh,
and then
nice.
there's a table out there too, if you want
Okay.
to use that table afterwards.
Okay, perfect. And my table is outside across from the garbage cans right over there. So I am selling the book. So
Can you hit the lights?
I brought lots of copies of the book.
Lights.
They're $25, and then like I said, at my website, so foodiebars.com. If you order at foodiebars.com, then I will go in the garage, put it in an envelope, and send it to you. Because that's where they all are, because it's self-published. So that's $3.99 for shipping, because that's what it cost me to ship it. But that's how that goes. Okay, so I have 2 questions right away. Yes.
Why do you recommend no oil?
No oil, because it is not a whole food and it is inflammatory. So on a cellular level, and it's not necessary to do. So I grew up Italian with lots of olive oil, but it is not a health product. And when we see the research for the Mediterranean diet, we see that the people that do the very best are not the people that do olive oil, they're the people that do nuts. So you can see they compare. So olive oil diet with lots of fruits and vegetables is better than the standard American diet, but it is not as good as it could be. Yes, your question.
Thank you. You're a nutritional rock star. I watched the Dr. Greger video
Yes.
that talked about keeping the temperature down on things like potatoes.
Right.
Because if you go over the 212 or whatever,
Right,
you can
the
form
acrylamide. Right.
So are you now recommending people steam and boil or
You know, bottom line is we need them to eat the vegetables. Like, bottom line, that's what it is. Now, if you want to tweak within that, like, I would not only roast vegetables. I would have vegetables in raw, and I talk about doing one cooked, one raw, always. So if you're having a meal, you're eating something cooked, make sure you've got something raw with it, you know, to do that. But I probably, I do a lot of steaming of but then actually the research shows that the most nutrients for sweet potatoes are boiling. And so but again, you know, and Dr. Greger does a good job. He's phenomenal. He is a rock star. But he talks about broccoli, cooking broccoli, and he says that when they did the research, the very best was microwave. Okay? All right, so looking at specific nutrients. Okay, so let's just, hold on. Okay. And depending on what you're looking at, the research showed that. However, he said the worst seems to be not thinking about fried, but is boiling. He said, but you only lose 14% when you boil, so have one extra floret. So the bottom line is, make it the way you'll eat it. And so I enjoy raw broccoli, I enjoy steamed broccoli, I enjoy roasted sometimes. So I think its variety is probably the best. And there also seems to be very good evidence that, like those AGEs that we were talking about. So you saw thousands of units of, the AGEs for some of those products. And then you see like baked apples versus raw, right? And baked apples was like 30 compared to 9,000 for a chicken breast, So, and then the raw apples was 17. So it's but we're talking about micro, So yes, I wouldn't cook everything to a crisp, but at the same time I wouldn't say, oh, I'm not going to eat that potato because. So yeah, I hope that answers. Okay, so lots of questions. Yes?
What about healthy fats, like avocados?
Excellent. Whole food.
I'm trying to gain weight after I was fasting for health reasons.
Okay.
And I wanted to be faster. So but I didn't know the opinion that too much of avocado is not good.
So I would really consider being patient. I know you said you want to be faster, but I think you need to take it as the process. And I don't think it makes sense to just like, okay, so now I know what that, so now I want to zoom up my weight. And I think maybe I'm more like, this is your journey and you'll get there. I think including avocado, I think unless, you are strict in cardiac danger, right? Because I know Esselstyn does no nuts at all, no avocado. There are certain indications for that. But I think the whole food sources make the most sense in reasonable amounts. But I wouldn't force feed a lot of fat, hoping that you're gonna get a result faster.
And what about everyday life? Let's say I'm not fasting, just
Right.
How much of healthy oil is normal?
Well, there's no oil, but
I mean
healthy
avocado.
fat.
Let's say avocado.
Yeah,
How many
avocado.
avocados?
It depends on the person, but I mean a quarter to a half an avocado, I think is reasonable. It doesn't take very much to get the nutrient absorption up. So yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Thank you. Speaking of oils, what about coconut oil, avocado oil, and the other piece you said boiling potatoes? Don't you lose the vitamins from boiling?
No, you don't. You do some of them and some of them are concentrated. So coconut oil, no. It's great for external. Okay, hair, not inside. The research shows it's consistent with progression of heart disease that you'd see with butter. So it's very saturated, very saturated. Coconut itself has a place in the diet, but coconut oil does not.
Any avocado oil?
No, avocados. Yeah.
So some of the dilemmas, like you've got Greger saying, Michael Greger saying things like, 40 handful of nuts, ounce of nuts, 40% less stroke if you eat that, whatever it is, 3-5 times.
Right.
And then you have Esselstyn saying you've got
Right.
heart issues. It's like, no nuts,
Right.
no avocado, nothing.
Right.
So here we have heart
There
issues,
will
we have
always
stroke,
be-
we have what's that?
Right. There will always be, and one of the unfortunate things is a lot of people use confusion, like on the outside, to like not do anything, because it's so hard, because you're wanting to find the very best recommendations, and I deal with the same because I listen to both guys. You know, and so that's why it really has to be on an individual level as well, where if you have just come out of a quadruple bypass, you are, you know, then I wouldn't
Worried about
delve in.
stroking out.
Right, exactly. So, but it's so complicated because what we know bottom line is when you focus on whole food, plant-based, tons of grains, you know, and doing all those vegetables and then doing lots of the good sweet potatoes and all of that, that your body will find its way to the healthiest version, and using nuts as a condiment like this, not sitting there with Costco thing of nuts and just, you know, because that's how it's supposed to, but that, you know. So yeah, it's, I know, so you find your way, whatever's the most, and there's other things that play a role with stroke too, sleep and other things too. All right, oh my gosh, lots of questions. Yes, sir.
Eggplant.
Yes.
Earlier today we heard eggplant no.
What? They said
One of the
nightshade?
presentations said eggplant no, so.
They said it was a nightshade? Is that the problem? I love eggplant with all of my heart. And it's purple, which means it's anthocyanins. And the other thing we have to remember too is that you have to be tuned into your body. If you eat something and it doesn't agree with you, then you need to make note of it. Because everybody's body's going to respond a little differently. So that's where you have to be, I want you, if nothing else, to approach learning and approach this with a sense of wonder. I wonder how my body will react to the nuts. I wonder how my body will react to the eggplant. And if you're aware, then you can be fine with this. But I think when people say, okay, no nightshades in, and no tomatoes, and no peppers, and no, it's like, wait a second. I don't know if that's going to apply to you. But if you know you get itchy on your arm right there every time you eat one, then maybe don't eat one. You know. Yes.
What you mean whole foods in terms of unprocessed foods, or what do you mean by saying whole foods?
Yes. So I mean like a sweet potato, not sweet potato chips.
Oh.
I mean
Not
like
processed.
yeah, as least processed as possible. Not like raw rice, you know, but not, you know, a lot of, have you seen those little snap peas that are not snap peas? They're chips that are blown up to look like peas. That frustrates me. Yes. So those are not peas. Those are pea-like products. Yes. Then we gotta go.
Yeah. Do you prefer to be out here at that table, or are you going to go back to your table? Yeah, there is one last
Yeah,
speaker.
one last speaker. I can be at that table for a couple minutes.
There's
Everybody to much.
Great.